This episode includes conversations about intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, addiction, homicide, and the loss of a loved one. Some listeners may find this content distressing. Please take care while listening, and if you need to pause and come back to this episode later, that's okay. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, resources are available. We'll share information at the end of this episode and include additional support services in our show notes. Take care. On a summer evening in August 2002, Rhonda Wilson left her home in Kentville, Nova Scotia. She never returned. More than 20 years later, her family is still searching for answers. This is Dark Harbor.
So, I'm excited about this episode.
Me too.
I'll be honest, I didn't know much about it.
Yeah. I remember this when it first happened.
Yeah.
So for our listeners here today, we are staying in the valley. Our last episode was Wolfville. And we're going to just go back to my hometown of Kentville here and talk about this case. But yeah, I knew about it. I remembered it, but I didn't know the whole other side of it that we're going to talk about today.
Right. There was quite a bit to this case.
Oh, yeah.
And multiple rabbit holes to go down with this one, which we love.
Yes, we do. And there was so much more to this. And so we stumbled on this case because of one of our listeners. So thank you to that. So it was somebody in Rhonda's family that reached out and said, "Hey, love your show. Have you thought about doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take a look." And then I did.
Yes.
And I said to Carrie, "Yeah, I think we should do this one next."
Yeah. We were like, yes.
Yeah. So thank you to Rhonda's family that reached out to us,
Thank you.
They've helped us with this episode. So we're very grateful to them and everybody else that's been listening and engaging with us.
Thank you so much. Didn't know we were going to be so popular.
I know. Yeah, we are loving all the engagement with you guys.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
We're so appreciative. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So who was Rhonda Wilson? Before we talk about Rhonda Wilson's disappearance, we want to start where every missing person investigation should begin, with the person at the center of it. When someone has been missing for more than 20 years, it's easy for their story to become defined by the police files, news headlines, and all the unanswered questions. But before Rhonda became a missing person, she was a daughter, a sister, a mother, and someone who, like everyone else, was just trying to navigate the best life she could. Rhonda Joyce Wilson was born on June 25th, 1971. She grew up in Nova Scotia, and according to members of her family, life wasn't always easy. Her childhood was complicated, and those early experiences would follow her into her adulthood. Like many people, Rhonda's life wasn't simple or straightforward. She experienced hardships that included struggles with substance use, and at one point she worked as a sex worker. Those who knew her say those parts of her life never defined who she was. They were chapters in a much larger story. Above everything else, Rhonda was a mother. She had 3 children. Her oldest daughter, Starlina, and later she had twins with her common-law partner, Albert Baird. Family members describe Rhonda as someone who loved her children deeply. They say there was never anything to suggest that she would willingly ever leave them behind. Looking back now, that becomes one of the most important parts of this case. Because when Rhonda disappeared, she didn't just leave a house. She left behind 3 children who would spend the rest of their childhood wondering what had happened to their mother. Family members also shared that Rhonda had experienced violence in more than one relationship. They believe her first serious relationship was abusive. Later, they say she experienced abuse during her relationship with Albert Baird as well. These accounts come from members of Rhonda's family and reflect what they witnessed or were told over the years. They're not findings made by a court, but they do provide important context for understanding Rhonda's life before she disappeared. When researching Rhonda's story, one theme came up repeatedly: People who knew her described her as somebody who faced difficult circumstances but kept trying to move forward. Like many survivors of intimate partner violence, leaving wasn't necessarily as simple as just walking away. And it's really important to talk about that there are so many reasons that people stay in abusive relationships. There's fear, financial dependence, children, isolation, and just the hope that things will change. And sometimes all of those reasons can exist at the same time. Today, we know that intimate partner violence is significantly underreported. In Canada, government data shows that about 80% of people who experience intimate partner violence never reported to the police.
That's scary.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
80%.
It's fear. It's the fear.
It's the fear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many factors with it. And, I know we're kind of diving into this part of it, a little ahead of her story here, but I do think it's just really important to just understand these things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And a lot of people just think it's a private matter, the fear, like you mentioned, shame, or they don't trust that reporting the abuse will make them safer.
Yeah. They a lot of times they think it's going to be worse for them. So they don't say anything.
Yeah.
They just suffer.
Yeah. Like if they do say something and then maybe no charges come of it.
Yep.
They have to go back to that house. Like it's really complicated.
Yeah.
And we can't really say what exactly Rhonda was experiencing in her home in the summer of 2002. But what we can definitely say is that people close to her had concerns.
She must have confided in like family, friends, or somebody. She must have talked. And I mean, I think a lot of times family members, if you're close enough and you come over to visit and stuff like that, I think a lot of times they can sense it. They know something's up.
And the family that did speak with me about this, they did say they weren't 100% sure that there was official police reports filed about any domestic abuse and intimate partner violence, but they suspect that there was.
Okay.
But they just couldn't say definitively. But again, she did reach out. She did talk to people, and the people in her life knew that there was more happening there.
Yeah, exactly.
According to information shared with us by members of Rhonda's family, they believe that the relationship had become increasingly volatile. So this is the relationship with Albert.
Okay.
That was her common law boyfriend, or whatever you want to label it.
Yeah.
They also believe drugs and alcohol often made arguments a lot worse. Again, these are the family's recollections and beliefs and not conclusions that were reached in court. And as we were preparing this episode, one comment from the family just really stood out to us. They said that there was never, ever a moment where they believed Rhonda had simply decided to disappear. She loved her children. She stayed connected to the people in her life. And there was just nothing about the days leading up to her disappearance that suggested that she was planning to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
That belief would only grow stronger after she vanished. Because according to investigators, Rhonda left behind her belongings. There's never been any activity on her bank accounts since she disappeared. And despite years of searching, there has never been any confirmed evidence that she started a new life somewhere else. And no one around her could have imagined that one ordinary August evening would become the beginning of a mystery that has now lasted more than 2 decades.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to our last case, Kinley, where he just went missing, no indication, and bank account not touched, belongings,
I know. I was thinking about that too, talking about it here. And it is very similar.
Very
and
similar.
This is technically another disappearance case.
Yeah.
So it's still considered a disappearance. It's still an active open case.
Yeah.
So it is very similar.
Very similar.
We just
very similar. And close in area as well.
Close in area. And another missing person case.
Oh, gosh. I hate that. I
know.
hate that. I wish,
It's hard to not know.
And I mentioned that in the last case too. I feel so bad for the family and the friends. Like, they still have that hope. Like, what if they're still around, like alive?
Right.
Like what, there's just so many different things to it. And I can't imagine them It's a hard one.
It really is, to just not have that final conclusion either way.
Yes.
In terms of what happened. And it has to be just the worst thing I could ever imagine.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. On August 7th, 2002, it was a warm Wednesday evening in Kentville. So Kentville is a small town in the Annapolis Valley where life often moved at a slower pace. People knew their neighbors, children rode their bikes throughout the streets, and an evening walk wasn't really anything anybody would think twice about. And for Rhonda Wilson, it just started as an ordinary day. There's very little publicly available information about what Rhonda did during the hours leading up to her disappearance. Unlike many modern investigations, there are no smartphones recording movements, no neighborhood security cameras documenting, who comes and goes, and just very little digital evidence that investigators could later retrace.
Right. Because once again, we're still in that era where I think cell phones might have started to come out around then-ish, I think. I'm just trying to think when I got my first one.
Me too. It might have been around
that time, but
early 2000s, but it wasn't. But they were still I had a flip phone.
Yeah,
it wasn't a smartphone.
Oh, definitely not a smartphone. No. And the thing is that parents, especially in small towns like this, the parents would be like, yes, just like we said before, come home when it starts to get dark, and and there was a big trust because everybody knew each other down there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, like I said, I grew up, and we lived that life very much.
Very much so, yeah.
And it was just, we were out and about. We were halfway across town on our bikes with no helmets.
Yes.
And
very illegal right now.
But it was just different. And I think, that, speaks to this case too, because there was just that comfort level where, oh, you're going for a walk? Cool.
Cool. We'll see you later. Have fun.
No big deal.
Yep.
According to the RCMP, Rhonda was living in Kentville with her common law partner and her 3 children. She was 31 years old. Sometime that evening at approximately 9:30 p.m., Rhonda reportedly left home to go for a walk. That timeline comes from a report later made to police. And later made is the key here.
Okay.
And according to investigators, she never returned. At first, there may not have been an immediate reason for alarm. Adults leave the house every day. We've talked about this before. Yeah. Sometimes they need time to themselves. Sometimes they visit a friend, stop at a store, just take a walk to clear their head. Yeah. Maybe they've had a shitty day.
Yeah, exactly.
But the hours passed and Rhonda didn't come home. One day became 2 days, and then 2 days became 3. According to the official police timeline, Rhonda wasn't reported missing until August 10th. Yeah, so that was 3 days after she was last seen. And it was on that day that the New Minas RCMP received a report that she had left home on the evening of the 7th and had not returned.
Okay.
Yeah, and that delay has remained one of the most discussed parts of this case for good reason.
I'm wondering why there was a delay. I've never been through anything like this, so I can't really say anything. But I think a lot of times you're like, oh, they're going to come home. They're just, what's the point of calling the police?
Right.
She'll come home. She'll come. Yeah. And then day 2 comes, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Even the next morning though, I if it was that evening and it's maybe she did pop over to a friend's and caught up, you and I can catch up and spend a lot of time chatting.
Oh, yeah.
For far too long. But, by the next day, she had 3 kids.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think is kind of sticking to me, that she had 3 kids at home waiting for her.
Exactly. Yeah. So to go out for a couple hours, sure. But then again, she wasn't reported. And I believe it was her partner, Albert, that reported her missing 3 days later on the 10th.
Okay.
Yeah. But over the years, Rhonda's family has struggled with the timeline. And when we first spoke with members of her family during our research, they told us that this was one of the first things that raised big concerns for them. They just couldn't understand why somebody who had disappeared would not be reported missing sooner, right? And it's important to remember that people do respond differently in situations like these.
Yeah.
Every missing persons case unfolds differently, and without knowing exactly what conversations took place during those days, it really is impossible to draw conclusions based on the delay alone.
Yeah.
But it does stand out.
Yeah.
And it always stood out to her family.
Oh, I bet it did.
And what investigators did focus on was Rhonda herself. Did she leave voluntarily? Had she told anybody she planned to leave? Was there any indication that she intended to start over somewhere else? Just go start a new life. But as the investigation progressed, those questions became increasingly difficult to answer with a yes.
Mm.
Police later confirmed that there was no activity on Rhonda's bank accounts after she disappeared. And over the years, investigators also looked into a number of reported sightings, but none of them could ever be substantiated. For Rhonda's family, those facts reinforced what they had believed from the beginning. According to the family that we spoke with, Rhonda just absolutely loved her children. They told us there was nothing about her life that suggested, again, that she would just willingly up and leave her 3 little kids.
Yeah.
And they were young, like 8 and younger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And me thinking, like, if she was planning to leave him and leave the situation or whatever, wouldn't she confide in a family member and make all arrangements to take her kids? Like, if she loved her kids and she's a mother. She wasn't going to leave the kids with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it was a volatile situation, which again is the conclusion that many have come to, again, without having exact, details on that, but that was the environment that the family truly, knew and believed was happening there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you wouldn't just leave your kids.
No, I think she would have made plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. As investigators began piecing together Rhonda's final known moments, another challenge quickly became apparent. There were no confirmed witnesses who publicly described seeing Rhonda after she left home that evening. So nobody has ever come forward and said, hey, yeah, I saw her out for a walk at 9:30 that night. So there's never been anybody that's come along and said, oh, yeah, I saw her walking down this street or, really confirming that she even went for this walk.
Right.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be any kind of ring cams or anything like that people have nowadays. So there's no way to prove, was she actually out for a walk?
Yeah, the only thing they would have really had would be witnesses.
Yeah.
That said, oh, yeah, I was driving to the store, I was driving here, and I did pass somebody that looked like her.
Yeah.
Her posters were up everywhere.
Yep.
And that was just never anything that anybody did see. And that's another, I think, important point to talk about. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And also, there's just been no physical evidence that's ever been released that clearly establishes where she went after leaving her home. And really, that absence of evidence would become one of the defining challenges of this investigation. When someone disappears without a trace, investigators often rely on a combination of witness statements, financial records, phone activity, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence to reconstruct what happened. In Rhonda's case, many of those investigative tools either didn't exist in 2002 or they produced very little information. This case would ultimately depend on patient police work. Yeah, so interviews, thousands of hours reviewing evidence. Because, people didn't have their, ring cams, but, businesses and stuff would have security. So I imagine they would have maybe looked at,
oh, gosh, yeah. They would have had to look through all that.
Yeah.
And they would have asked neighbors and friends and just, And she just vanished.
She did. And so they would have interviewed everybody and anybody in the area, everybody that knew her. So, so much time spent just reviewing any evidence that they could try to find.
Right.
In years of following leads that more often than not, they just led nowhere. They just couldn't seem to really catch on to anything that was really substantial. As the days passed, Rhonda's disappearance became more than a missing person investigation. For her children, life had suddenly changed. For her parents, siblings, every phone call brought hope that someone had seen her. Every familiar vehicle pulling in the driveway carried the possibility that the police had bad news, or good news. Anyone who has lived through the disappearance of a loved one describes a unique kind of uncertainty. Like we talked about, there's no I guess I don't want to say the word closure because I don't know if that's really accurate.
I know what you mean though. It kind of is. Like they don't know, like, are they missing? Are they, are they dead? Like, are they hurt? Like, did they pack up and leave and just say, screw it, I'm starting over?
Yeah, there's no finality.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that would be the hardest part of it for the family.
Knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no funeral,
right?
No, grave to visit, and just again, no finality, no certainty of what happened, and it's just the questions, day after day after day.
Yeah.
And for her family, those questions have now lasted more than 2 decades.
That's crazy.
Yeah. In the beginning, however, there was still hope that investigators would find her. The RCMP began what appeared to be a routine missing person investigation, but that wouldn't remain for very long. As officers interviewed family members, friends, and people who knew Rhonda, they slowly began gathering pieces of a much larger puzzle. Some of those pieces would eventually convince investigators that this wasn't a case of a woman who had simply disappeared. They believed something happened to Rhonda. The challenge was proving it. And proving it without the one thing investigators hope to find in every homicide investigation, a body.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a point in every missing person investigation where the questions begin to change. In the first few hours, investigators are focused on finding somebody quickly. They look at the places that the person is known to visit, they speak with the family, the friends, and they really just try to establish that timeline and determine whether the disappearance might just have an innocent explanation.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are times, what we talk about here is a little different, but there are a lot of times where maybe somebody is reported missing and they were just over at a friend's or somewhere and they do turn up. That's the bright side of this.
Yes, exactly.
Not what we're talking about here, but it does happen. So they do want to kind of,
because I follow on Facebook, like the police site or whatever, and they always post like the missing person, and then they'll say, oh, we found the person that was missing that we posted about yesterday. And and a lot of times it's young people that are just like, I'm sick of my parents, I'm gonna run away. And they run away for overnight, and then they come home when they realize, oh god, I have to move home. But I did it when I was a teenager. I was like, bring you, and I went off to my friend's house, and and
absolutely,
then come home, and then they're like, oh, you're back, I see. I'm like, yeah, I was fine.
Exactly.
They ran out of food.
That's right. I realized I have no money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm 16.
Exactly. Yeah. And life is so dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that though. When I see like if the RCMP or the regional police post that, they're like, this person's been found safe. I'm like, oh gosh. Because you kind of wait.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, don't be. But if you can imagine in like Rhonda's case and even Kenley last week, this in the beginning days is that.
Yeah. They're like,
they're
going to come home.
Yeah.
They're probably just, out just clearing their head or whatever.
Yeah. And it could be that case where you see the update and say, oh, we found them. Everything's okay.
So with this case, her spouse waited 3 days before telling even her family that she was missing.
I believe so. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was that delay that was, again, like the family said, instantly stood out to them. And I think most people, because again, like we said, you can chalk up maybe that night. Yeah. But into the next day with 3 kids at home. Yeah.
Especially where he knows, like, there's no way she'd just leave her kids.
No.
Especially in the situation with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So... Yeah.
And she loved her kids, and her family, everybody close to her said that. And of course, doing the deep dives we do, I ran into comments on something on social media. I honestly don't remember what it was, but it was somebody that was, I think, a nurse in the hospital when she had her twins.
Oh.
So she had an oldest child with her first partner.
Okay.
And so the older child was with him, that was her ex. And then with Albert, they had twins together.
Okay.
And there was a comment that I somehow, I don't know, I find everything.
I know.
I
You
do.
really do.
I do. And there was a comment saying, oh my gosh, I remember her so well. Like something along the lines of like, she was just so overjoyed with the birth of her twins. I loved caring for her.
Aww.
And she was so sweet and just so overjoyed. And it just made me go, oh my gosh. Like
yeah.
Just, yeah.
And like the nurse remembers her like that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So that one stuck with me.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. But when the days continue to pass without answers, investigators are forced to consider another possibility. Something has gone terribly wrong.
Yeah.
For the RCMP, those first days after Rhonda Wilson was reported missing would become the foundation for everything else that followed. According to police, Rhonda had been seen on the evening of August 7th, 2002, and she was reported missing, like we said, on August 10th. And it was reported that she left her Kentville home to go for a walk 9:30 p.m. on the 7th.
Yeah.
And like any investigation, officers began by trying to establish facts. And, you know, like we said, going down, you know, everything that they can possibly find. And again, a lot of those questions have never been answered publicly. But as we're going to find out a little bit more about this case, there's, I think, a lot more that the public doesn't know.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That just hasn't been released publicly because this turns into something pretty big.
Oh, it does.
And so I think there's a lot that they have kept close to the vest for very good reason.
Yeah.
And it's still an open case. So, yeah. So that might make...
2 decades later.
Yeah.
Still an open case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that might make more sense as we discuss some further...
As we keep going.
As we get further down this case. And that's not uncommon in any kind of, you know, long investigation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, police, you know, like we said, they choose not to release details because, you know, specific details might be details that only the person that would be responsible for that missing person would know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If someone later comes forward with information or a confession, investigators need a way to test whether that information is actually true and genuine. So if everything's just out there in the open, as much as the public, I think sometimes wants it to be, they want to have everything and understand everything.
Yeah.
They have to keep some of that close.
Oh, they have to, because if not, I mean, someone's going to say, oh, yeah, it was me and I had that red shirt on. Because they heard it on the media,
right?
You know, and
that
stuff drives me nuts.
Yeah, and they want to focus on credible tips too, like not, you know, tips that are going to lead them down, you know, answering 1,000 phone calls about, like you said, a person in a red shirt. Like, they, you know, it's details that I think, you know, they have to decipher what does the public need to know.
Yeah.
And what do we need to keep close?
I think a lot of times public, including myself, I am very much I need to know everything. Why are they releasing all this information?
Yeah.
But I think now that we've started doing these things, these podcasts and stuff and these cases, I've learned that, they have to keep some stuff back.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that they're being arseholes about it. They're just, this is like, we have to, because if we let too much out, we're going to have a bunch of people that come forward that make no sense, and then they're wasting everybody's time.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
The amount of hours and resources and just boots on the ground police work that would have to go into following up every tip.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't, you know, they want to focus on what needs to be focused on.
Absolutely. And I get it now. Like,
me too.
Like I said before, I'd be like, damn it, they're not telling us everything. And I get pissed off with them. And
you and I have had those conversations where I'm like, have you heard the update on such and such?
And it's like, why aren't they telling us? And then you see it on social media, people losing their shit over it. But I get it now, because it makes more sense why they have to keep things closer to them.
And it, you know, makes sense, and it always did. I think the thing that, you know, I always struggle with is when the speculation starts.
Yes.
And I mean, it's going to happen, but, you know, when you're in the middle of like where we are now with this case, where somebody's missing, this is what we know, all the speculation starts.
Absolutely.
And then there's, it can be pretty harmful too, especially with keyboard warriors online. I mean, back then we wouldn't have had Facebook and all that in 2002.
Gosh, no.
But, you know, nowadays, though, things that come out, there's people just
they're just vicious and nasty.
It can get that way. And I try not to go to the comment section.
No, I try not to either.
On really anything.
No, that's a rabbit hole on its own and a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Stay out of the comment section on literally everything.
Everything, yeah.
It's good life advice.
It's true.
As frustrating as the silence can be for families and the public, it's often a deliberate investigative strategy. And that appears to have been the case here with Rhonda. When we spoke with members of Rhonda's family while researching this episode, they described receiving very little information from investigators over the years. They understood that police were actively working the case, but they were rarely told what evidence had been collected or what the investigation was doing, really, and where it was leading. And, according to the family, they were left with a lot more questions than answers. So, again, same thing. And this is her direct family.
I know.
But they had to leave, can only give so much.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think a lot of people think, oh, the family should know everything. And to an extent, but they also have to keep stuff away because they don't want to give the family hope.
It's that, and then you also like looking at suspects.
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe one of the family members, no, I'm not saying in this case.
No.
But
in
maybe
some
one
cases,
of the family
though,
members is a potential suspect that they haven't let that person know yet. So
or they are a link to a person.
Exactly.
You can just go on. But so
it's like giving them a heads up. Hey, we think you murdered someone and we're coming to get you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to give them a heads up. So,
yeah. So they had to keep that and that's what they had said to me too. Like they generally, they pretty much knew what the public knew.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a whole lot else that they were told. But they did just, continue on with the investigation. And again, they just weren't able to turn up anything that she had voluntarily taken off. Because usually, like if somebody does voluntarily disappear, there's some sign that life has continued elsewhere.
Bank account.
Yeah,
money.
Bank account.
You need money to survive.
Big one. And this was only 2002. And so tracking financial records, but her accounts hadn't been touched.
Right.
There's no application for, a new passport or
anything.
Yeah. So just nothing there.
Yeah.
So in Rhonda's case, the investigators never publicly identified the evidence pointing them in the direction that they think something else might have happened, that she just didn't voluntarily take off.
Yeah.
But the uncertainty of not knowing was, of course, really difficult for Rhonda's children. Her oldest daughter, Starlina, was just 8 years old when her mom disappeared.
Oh, so young.
I know, so young, just a baby. And then the twins, like we talked about, she had twins. They were even smaller. I don't know exactly how old they were.
Yeah.
But, according to members of Rhonda's family, the twins later entered foster care. So they ended up in the foster care system, but they were eventually adopted together.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And Starlina, being the older one, she really carried the loss of her mother throughout her life. And this is really heartbreaking and just so incredibly sad. In 2015, Starlina died from a drug overdose at the age of 22.
Oh, God. Oh.
Yeah. And her family just, they believe that just the trauma of losing her mom at such a young age and just had such a profound, obviously, and lasting impact on her life.
And having her twin siblings taken away and going into foster care, eventually being adopted. Like,
I know.
I don't, like we said, we don't know the age of the twins, but, there's probably, a few years between them. So, I mean, that just, oh my God. And that poor 8-year-old girl.
I know.
And then having to be pulled away from the family and then just, oh God.
It's like they would have woken up and their lives changed forever.
Forever. Yeah.
They went to bed that night, just innocent kids, and then they wake up and their whole world,
Mommy's missing,
is turned upside down.
Next year, your siblings are being taken away, and we don't know what happened to your mom. And oh my God, I can't believe that she died.
I know. So she really struggled with substance use, which is just heartbreaking. And again, a lot of people, that have severe trauma and they're huge life struggles. I mean, substance use was a way for her to kind of numb that pain of losing her mom and not having those answers.
Yeah.
But for investigators, the work kept going. It continued. Long-term missing person investigations rarely unfold in dramatic moments. And the work, it happens quietly.
Yeah.
Witnesses are interviewed, statements are compared, names are revisited, old information gets looked at through a new lens or maybe by different investigators that will join the team.
Fresh eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes investigators discover that a witness remembered something incorrectly. And other times, someone who wasn't willing to speak years earlier decides they're ready. So it's there's always something moving, even though, again, we don't see it out.
We don't see it out. Yeah.
Out, front forward facing. Cases can change because of one forgotten conversation, one overlooked detail, or one person who decides that they can no longer keep a secret. The public doesn't see all that work. They see these periods of silence. They assume nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And again, as we know, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. And this was really true in Rhonda's case.
Yeah.
Although, again, little info was released publicly, the RCMP were behind the scenes doing a lot. And there was a point in April 2010. So that was nearly 8 years after Rhonda disappeared. So her case was added to the Nova Scotia Rewards for Major Unsolved Crimes, which we've talked about a few times now. So 8 years after her disappearance, she was added to that list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And the province announced the reward for up to $150,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her disappearance.
Okay.
And adding to that list is pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few names on that list already.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a few there. And it also just kind of signals that investigators believe that somebody might still have information on that case and that there's information out there that needs to come forward, that could come forward. And so she was added to that in 2010. And adding to that list as well just brings that renewed public attention to it.
Yeah.
So, that investigations, they do fade. Like you said, you don't remember it. I remember part of this case, and same with other ones out there. Like you remember it maybe when it first happened, and then you kind of lose the trail after a while.
And I find some cases get a lot more exposure than others, as we know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this case, if I heard about it, I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
I won't even lie. And even when I was, kind of going down the rabbit hole with you with things, looking into it, I still was like, I still don't remember this. And so it was interesting coming up with all the information.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, like a term that I've come across, and I know you and I have talked about this, but we'll bring it up here too, is just the term a pure victim.
Yeah.
It's just unsettling in a way. Like, don't get me wrong. What a lot of people, investigators, police consider to be a quote unquote pure victim is somebody walking down the road and it's a random spur of the moment attack or something that happens. Yeah. But when you start talking about people that have had a complicated life, right? Like Rhonda, she had a lot of struggles.
Yeah.
But, I think that puts her into a different lens to some people. And that should never be the case.
I was just going to say, I think people look and say, oh, well, she was a drug user. Oh, she was a sex worker. Well, we know what happened there. They just assume.
And
they shouldn't. Nobody should assume. Sometimes people in life have to do things to support themselves.
Absolutely.
And you don't know someone's background. You don't know what they went through. So don't assume. That just because she was a sex worker, that she did it because she wanted to. It's probably because she had to.
Yeah, nobody is doing that because they want to.
Yeah.
They're doing that out of desperation.
She had kids to feed.
100%.
Like rent, mortgage, or whatever she had, bills. And, back then it was a lot cheaper than it is now. But I hate when people just, oh, well, she was a sex worker. That's what happened. Well, no, that's not what happened.
It's a dangerous profession. Well, there's a lot of dangerous professions that, nobody deserves any harm or any abuse or any anything like this to happen to them. So knowing her past, I mean, I just wonder, because I know historically, if you look at a lot of like big, cases from across the world, different things, there is definitely that kind of like, oh, well, they were this person. Oh, well, they engaged in this behavior. Oh, there is that tone, and it just pisses me off.
Me too. It's disgusting that people think like that, and I get so pissed off.
Me too. It just...
Because guess what?
Yeah.
Rhonda was still a person.
Absolutely.
And she had a family that loved her, kids 100%. That loved her, and she had to do what she had to do, and none of us know why she did it.
Exactly.
So don't assume.
Never assume.
No.
Yeah, that's
my big word.
That's
assume.
Our PSA for today, people.
That's your life lesson. Assume. You make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Never assume.
Yeah.
According to the RCMP, while the reward itself didn't directly lead to an arrest, the publicity generated numerous phone calls from members of the public, and every one of those calls had to be reviewed and investigated. Staff Sergeant Tom Townsend later reflected on the persistence of the investigation, saying that the investigators never gave up hope that they would eventually identify the person responsible for Rhonda's disappearance. And that statement says something important about this case.
Yeah.
That the investigators, they hadn't stopped looking.
Yeah.
They had not closed the file, and they had not concluded that Rhonda had simply disappeared. They were building the investigation piece by piece behind the scenes. And what the public didn't know at the time was investigators were beginning to consider a very, very, very different approach that we're going to get into here. Traditional investigative techniques had taken them as far as they could with this case, and there was no body. So she was still missing. There was no publicly known forensic evidence linking anybody to Rhonda's disappearance. And if investigators believed they knew who was responsible, they still faced the challenge of proving it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
The next step would be to involve one of the most controversial undercover policing techniques ever developed here in Canada, a strategy that has solved murders, prompted national legal debate, and ultimately changed Canadian criminal law. Before we explain that operation, though, we're going to need to understand the relationship at the center of this investigation and why those closest to Rhonda have long believed that the answers were much closer to home. By the time Rhonda Wilson disappeared in August of 2002, she was 31 years old, raising 3 children, and from the outside, it might have looked like just any ordinary family trying to get by. But as investigators began speaking with the people who knew Rhonda best, a more complicated picture began to emerge. When researching this case, like we said, we spoke with members of Rhonda's family, and they generously shared memories, their perspective, and they have asked to remain anonymous, and we are going to respect that throughout this episode, of course.
Yep.
And like any family, they don't remember Rhonda as a police file. They remember as a person, and they miss her, and they love her, and, Rhonda is someone that they believe was trying to make the best of the circumstances that she was given, and that was really difficult for her. Those circumstances included addiction, and according to the family members, drugs had become a part of Rhonda's life. They also believe alcohol and drugs used within the household contributed a lot to the instability, to the conflict, and And while they couldn't speak to the extent of the substance use, they described an environment that they believe had become increasingly volatile. Family members also described a pattern that extended beyond addiction. They believe Rhonda experienced abuse in more than one relationship, that we touched on that earlier.
That's so sad.
Yeah. So according to her family, her first significant relationship, I believe they were married, and was to the father of her oldest daughter, Starlina, that we talked about.
Yeah.
They very strongly believe that relationship was abusive. We didn't dive too far into it.
No.
But they just said yes, where they believed that was an abusive relationship. And then Rhonda had entered this relationship with Albert Baird. And they say that relationship was also marked by abuse. And these are the family's recollections and beliefs. And again, they have not been established as findings in court.
No.
But that's what was known about their relationship. One family member told us that they believed violence had become widely known among people close to Rhonda. According to that family member, friends and relatives were aware of physical abuse within the relationship. And again, drugs, alcohol, that always intensifies things. And it was their opinion that if Rhonda had been killed, it was more likely the result of an explosive act of violence versus something that would have been planned.
Right.
So again, that dynamic of that physical abuse, that very toxic, unhealthy
alcohol, drugs
relationship
involved could make things just explode.
And that was their personal belief, that it wasn't anything plotted out or planned. It was just an in the moment, maybe a bad fight happened.
Words were said. And
it just went further than it ever had. And it sounds like things had gone far before, which is awful, but that's what they believe might have happened.
Okay.
Whenever a case involves allegations of intimate partner violence, there's a question that is often asked by people looking in from the outside. Why didn't they leave?
Big question. Everybody always asks.
Yeah. And I know we touched on this earlier too, but again, it's so difficult to leave those situations.
It's easier said than done. And, when you're on the outside, you're like, you could just leave, just go. If that was me, I'd leave. But you don't know the circumstances.
Exactly.
And she also had children with this person. And, she has to keep a house and food and stability for the kids. So,
exactly.
People are too judgy when it comes to this stuff. And until you've been in that situation, it's impossible to even come up with it. The reason why.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so many people say, well, why did you stay so long, or why did it take you this long to leave? And again, unless you're in that position and whether it's, any type of abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial, all of the things that come with it, at the end of the day, people that are in these situations are so mentally beat down. Yeah. They're so unsure of themselves. Yeah. The tables have been turned on them. They've probably been gaslit forever.
And they think, I don't deserve anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back to the investigation. Eventually, investigators reached a point where traditional investigative methods had taken them as far as they could. If they were going to move the investigation forward, they needed something more. Not another search, not another rumor. They needed evidence that could explain what happened on the night that Rhonda disappeared. That search for answers would eventually lead investigators to one of the most controversial undercover policing techniques ever used in Canada, the technique known as Mr. Big. So a Mr. Big operation, for anybody that's not in Canada, although it is used, I think, in a couple other countries like New Zealand, Australia.
I think so too. Yeah.
There's a couple other countries that do it or do something similar, but the technique was developed by the RCMP in the early 1990s, and it's been used across Canada in serious criminal investigations, particularly cases where investigators believe they know who's responsible, but they don't have enough evidence to lay charges. Unlike traditional undercover investigation, a Mr. Big operation can take months to complete. It's a long process.
It is a long process.
Undercover officers gradually develop a relationship with the suspect. Over time, they create the impression that the suspect has become involved with a successful criminal organization. The suspect is offered money, friendship, and opportunities to participate in what appears to be criminal activities. Yeah. And then eventually, the reason why it's called Mr. Big is eventually the suspect, once they form this kind of trust or relationship, the suspect is eventually introduced to the fictional head of this criminal organization, also known as Mr. Big.
Okay.
And during that meeting, that's when the suspect is told that before becoming a trusted member of the organization, they need to be honest about any serious crimes that they may have committed. Investigators hope that the suspect will confess and provide details that only the person responsible would know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's like their initiation into like meeting that boss. Like, we have to know you're serious here. Tell me something about
Tell me
yourself.
something you did for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what kind of clout do you have, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
yeah. And this technique has been used in hundreds of investigations across Canada, and it's contributed to the convictions in a number of homicide cases, some very well-known ones, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's also been very criticized because of concerns that the pressure created during the operation itself could lead to unreliable confessions. Those concerns would eventually lead to significant changes in Canadian law, but in Rhonda's case, those changes were still several years away.
Mm.
So when they started the Mr. Big operation with her case,
Yeah.
and at that time, investigators began planning the operation in Rhonda's case. So Mr. Big operations were really still considered one of the most effective undercover tools available to Canadian police. And
Yeah.
again, they were at that point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. They
in
had
this-
to do something.
Yeah, they had to do something. So
Yeah.
kind of pulling out the big guns.
Yeah. Mr. Big Guns.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
The details of the operation itself have never been released publicly, and much of what occurred remains protected because of the way that these investigations are conducted, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But what is known publicly is that the operation ultimately became a turning point in this investigation. After more than a decade, the case that remained unsolved for years was about to change dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
In May 2013, Rhonda had been missing for more than 10 years when the investigators made an arrest. For the first time since Rhonda disappeared, the investigation moved from the missing person case to a murder prosecution.
Hmm.
According to members of Rhonda's family, investigators later told them that Albert Baird had confessed during the undercover operation. Family members also told us they were informed that the alleged confession included information about Rhonda's body being disposed of in a manure pit on an abandoned pig farm, which led investigators to conduct a very, very extensive search in Sheffield Mills. Sheffield Mills is just like it's just outside of Kentville, about like 10-minute drive.
I was going to say, it's not that far.
Yeah, it's basically farmland.
Yeah.
And this was an abandoned farm where, again, this information came from, said she was disposed of there, and that's where this really big search came in.
Yeah.
They emphasized that these details have never been officially released by police and were shared with them privately. Because the alleged confession has never been made public, we cannot independently verify the contents.
Right. Yeah.
Police did not publicly confirm the relationship between Rhonda and the accused. However, multiple media outlets reported that friends of Baird identified him as Rhonda's common-law partner at the time she disappeared. When announcing the arrest, RCMP Staff Sergeant Tom Townsend said that the investigation had never stopped. He stated that the dedication of the investigators and their determination to solve the case had led to the arrest, adding that the investigators never gave up hope. They would identify the person responsible for Rhonda's disappearance. For Rhonda's family, the arrest represented the first major breakthrough since she disappeared more than a decade earlier. But one important piece of the investigation was still missing.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the arrest, police had not located Rhonda's body. That meant investigators were preparing to prosecute a homicide case without recovering the victim's remains.
That has to be difficult.
Very.
I mean, I know that they've done it. I've watched, different things on it and whatnot, but it's really hard to prove. They have to have all their ducks in a row, big time, in order for it to go through on a guilty plea kind of thing.
There just has to be so much other evidence there.
Oh, absolutely.
Because to have a no-body case it's crazy. I mean, it's happened.
Yeah.
We've had them here in Canada.
Yeah.
Where they've convicted people of murder without having a body, but they're just really complex.
Very complex. Yeah.
And, as we know with this case, the whole reason that they did the Mr. Big operation to begin with was because they were just kind of out of options.
They had no other choice. They had to try to get something.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of other things coming forward. So prosecutors must rely on other forms of evidence to establish both that a crime occurred and who was responsible. Following the arrest, investigators began an extensive search of the property on Black Hole Road. They believed the area could contain evidence connected to Rhonda's disappearance. The search attracted significant public attention because of its scale and duration. For several weeks, forensic investigators examined the property. The search included a former pig farm, where police used specialized equipment to examine material from a large concrete waste pit.
Oh,
I know. According to CBC reporter Robert Short, investigators used heavy equipment, industrial vacuum trucks, water screening systems, and a forensic specialists as they searched the site for evidence.
okay. I'm just going to say this part here. So I kind of know about this kind of stuff. And the reason is I watch Oak Island Mystery on TV.
I've never watched that.
What?
I know.
Phil and I are obsessed. But anyways, what they're doing is they have the water trucks and the screening systems, and it's almost like they shuffle it. Like it's a whole system, and it shuffles all the gravel and everything, and they look for bones.
Like a strainer?
Yes.
Oh.
And it like vibrates, and then the water washes away like the dirt so that everything is, it's like so cool.
Oh, okay. I need to watch that now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what this would be then.
That's what I'm assuming, because they would have, I'm sure, because it's a pig farm, there's probably other stuff there.
I can't even imagine what
so they
would be
have
in
to
there.
determine what's what.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
That's what I'm assuming. So if you haven't seen Oak Island, Oak Island is also in Nova Scotia, and they have a whole series which is popular. So
Oh, I know. People across the world watch it.
we went for the tour.
Yeah.
We were obsessed.
Were you?
Oh, yes.
I don't know why I haven't caught on to that yet.
Oh my God, you would love it. It's like treasure
It's probably
finding.
embarrassing that I haven't. Despite the extensive search, investigators did not locate Rhonda's remains. So
God.
after doing that, and again, this is a manure pit.
Yeah.
And full of who knows what. It's an abandoned farm. But anyway, they were there for, I think, upwards of like 2 months.
Oh my God.
It was a long time that they were there. Later that year, the RCMP carried out another search in the Sheffield Mills area, this time focusing on Baines Road, approximately a kilometer from this original search location. Police confirmed that some items were recovered during this search, although they did not say what they were. Those items were sent for analysis to determine whether they were connected to the investigation. Investigators did not return to continue searching the following day, and the results of that analysis have never been publicly released. So
I wonder if her family found out.
I don't think so.
But they said they found some items, but never said what they were.
Never said what they were. So what's, public here that the police made public, which is where we're getting all of the information about the investigation from.
Interesting.
They haven't been told any more than that with the evidence.
Wow.
Yeah. So some items were recovered. I mean, that just made me go, oh my
that
God,
opens a can of worms. Like, what was it?
What could it be?
Yeah.
Like human remain. It's kind of wild. So I don't know exactly what they were, and nobody does yet. But again, still an open case.
Yeah.
As 2013 came to a close, the investigation appeared to be moving towards trial. Albert Baird remained in custody. Court appearances were scheduled, and for the first time in more than a decade, Rhonda's family believed that they might finally hear the evidence investigators had spent years assembling. However, before the case reached a preliminary inquiry, a decision from the Supreme Court of Canada would fundamentally change the legal landscape for every Mr. Big prosecution in the country, including this one. In Rhonda's case, one of the Crown's most important pieces of evidence was expected to be the confession allegedly obtained during the RCMP's Mr. Big operation. As court proceedings continued, preliminary inquiry dates were scheduled for January 2015, with additional court date appearances planned throughout 2014. At that stage, there was every indication that the case would continue through the normal court process. But while the preparations for trial were underway in Nova Scotia, another case was making its way through the Supreme Court of Canada. And this case had nothing to do with Rhonda Wilson. It involved a man named Nelson Hart from Newfoundland.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Hart had been convicted in 2007 of murdering his twin 3-year-old daughters.
Oh my God.
I know. Like the investigation into Rhonda's disappearance, the prosecution relied heavily on a confession obtained during a Mr. Big operation. Mr. Hart appealed the conviction, arguing that a confession was unreliable because of the pressure created during the undercover operation.
Mm-hmm.
In July 2014, the Supreme Court of Canada released its decision in the Nelson Hart case. The court did not prohibit the use of Mr. Big operations.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Big blow.
Big blow. Like the timing of that to happen completely separate from Rhonda's case.
Yeah.
I mean,
that just screws everything.
Everything, because that was what they had.
What? How frustrating.
So frustrating. But instead, it established a new legal framework for determining whether confessions obtained through these operations could be admitted as evidence. The court concluded that confessions obtained during Mr. Big operations should be considered presumptively inadmissible. Yeah. And from that point forward, it became the Crown's responsibility to demonstrate that a confession was reliable and that its value as evidence outweighed the potential prejudice created by the undercover operation itself.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court identified several concerns. Because suspects are often offered money, friendship, the promise of belonging to what they believe is a criminal organization, there's a risk that some people may confess simply to gain acceptance or avoid disappointing the big crime boss, the Mr. Big.
Yep.
The court also noted that investigators must avoid creating circumstances that could produce an unreliable confession. As a result, trial judges were instructed to examine factors such as the suspect's personal vulnerabilities, the nature of the inducements offered during the operation, and whether the confession contained details that could be independently confirmed. Legal experts immediately recognized that this decision would affect more than just the Hart case. Criminal defense lawyer Peter Copeland told CBC that a number of cases involving Mr. Big confessions would likely have to be reviewed because of the change in the law. Other legal commentators made similar observations, noting that prosecutions, still before the courts, would be particularly affected by this new legal standard, which was just right at the right time for Rhonda's case, or wrong time, however you want to look at it.
But also so many other cases that were pending the courts at that point too.
Across the country.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So this really changed things a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the Crown prosecutors reviewed the evidence in light of the Supreme Court's decision, they concluded there was no longer a reasonable prospect of obtaining a conviction. On September 24th, 2014, the first-degree murder charge against Albert Baird was withdrawn in Kentville Provincial Court.
Oh my God. The family must have been losing their shit over this.
It got to this point, and this is 2014. She went missing. This is 12 years.
Yeah. And then they all of a sudden are like,
years.
okay, here we go. Here we go. And then it's like the carpet was just ripped out underneath them.
Yeah, because he's arrested. He's charged. He's in trial.
Yeah.
Like the preliminary trial, like they're all the way this far with it.
Yeah.
And then this happens.
Just devastating.
Yeah. Crown prosecutor Robert Morrison told the court that the recent Supreme Court ruling had changed the legal landscape surrounding Mr. Big confessions and that the Crown could no longer proceed with a reasonable prospect of conviction. Judge Claudine MacDonald formally dismissed the charge. For Rhonda's family, of course, this was absolutely devastating.
Oh, yeah.
After waiting for more than 12 years for someone to be charged, they once again found themselves without the answers that they hoped for during the court process. Rhonda's sister, Jen Corbin, later told CBC that investigators explained the charge had been withdrawn so police could take a step back and continue gathering evidence. She said she was also told investigators had a substantial amount of evidence, but they still did not have Rhonda's body. Importantly, the withdrawal of the charge did not end the investigation, though. Following the court appearance, Crown Prosecutor Robert Morrison publicly stated that Albert Baird remained a suspect and that investigators were continuing their work. He emphasized that the investigation was not ending simply because the charge had been withdrawn. From a legal perspective, the withdrawal of the charge should not have been interpreted as a finding that no crime occurred or that anyone had been cleared of suspicion.
Yeah.
Rather, it just reflected the Crown's assessment that under the legal rules established by the Supreme Court of Canada, there was no longer a reasonable prospect of securing a conviction based on the evidence that could be presented in court.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not saying, oh, he's innocent, or
they have to go a different way to try to find out.
Yeah.
Instead of, I can kind of understand their point. So I get where they're coming from because they have to be secure with everything. So they're paying him, they're, make him like buddy. And of course, like you said, they're probably going to be like, oh yeah, I killed 5 people. I did this, I did that. Because they want to look like Mr. Tough Guy and like the big guns kind of thing. And look at me, I'm super cool. And yeah, I should be in your little posse kind of thing. So, but then again, they're going to get people saying that they did things that they didn't to make themselves look bigger than what they are. So, yeah. But in the same sense, like,
I know, it's like
so frustrating.
It is questionable. Like I understand that side of it because, like you said, like maybe they're just going to try to make themselves sound
like they're big shots compared to,
or they could say, well, yeah, I said that, but I only said it because of the pressure. So yeah.
And then of course, all they have to do is say that, and then everything's thrown out the window.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. More than 20 years after Rhonda disappeared, the RCMP still consider the investigation active. Rhonda has never been found. No one has been convicted in connection with her disappearance. The reward offered through Nova Scotia Major Unsolved Crimes Program also remains in place. The province of Nova Scotia continues to offer up to $150,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of person or persons responsible for Rhonda Wilson's disappearance. According to the program, anybody with information is encouraged to contact the Major Unsolved Crimes Program. Although legal proceedings ended in 2014, the impact on Rhonda's family did not. When speaking publicly after the charge was withdrawn, Rhonda's sister, Jen, said that she remained hopeful that investigators would continue to build the case. During our research for this episode, we spoke with members of Rhonda's family who told us they still believe someone knows what happened. They also expressed appreciation that Rhonda's story is continuing to receive attention. One family member told us they believed Rhonda's disappearance has received far less media attention coverage than many other unsolved cases here in Nova Scotia, and they hoped that sharing her story here through the Dark Harbor podcast might encourage someone with information to come forward.
I agree. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't hear much about this case.
Yeah.
And like I said before, there's some cases that, they've gotten tons of media coverage. And, people are like, you guys should do that case. You should do that case. It's like, it's not that we don't want to. It's just, I really like to focus on ones that haven't gotten much coverage.
Yeah.
Bring them more to light again.
That's what I like. And, there's definitely a lot of things to cover, but, we said this before, there's some that just get a lot of attention, and it's not that they shouldn't. It's just,
no, exactly.
My hope would be that every case would get the same level of attention. Yeah. Every case would get the amount of, documentaries or books or podcasts.
Something. Yeah.
And I don't think there has been a podcast episode dedicated to Rhonda.
No.
She might have been mentioned in one, but I couldn't find anything.
I couldn't find anything either.
Yeah.
I looked and looked and I could not find anything.
No. And that's what her family member had said to me too, that had reached out to me. She said, her case hasn't been done in a podcast before. And they still just really want to get her story out there.
Absolutely. Especially all these years later. And you just never know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we're here today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And cases like Rhonda's also raise broader questions about intimate partner violence and missing women. During our research, we found that Nova Scotia currently has the highest rate of self-reported intimate partner violence in Canada.
That's crazy.
That's surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Very scary. In 2024, the provincial government formally declared intimate partner violence an epidemic. Following years of increasing calls for support and rising demand for services, thousands of women and children in Nova Scotia access help from transition houses and victim support organizations every year. Those stats can't tell us what happened to Rhonda, but again, important context because there is mention of that in her life.
Yeah.
And as we said throughout this episode, there's still many unanswered questions in Rhonda's case. Some details, are only known to the investigators, and the others are, they might only be known to the person or people responsible.
Yeah.
What is known is that Rhonda disappeared after leaving her Kentville home on the evening of August 7th, 2002. She was never seen again. There has been no confirmed activity on her bank accounts. Despite years of investigation, multiple searches, and a murder prosecution, her remains have never been found. Sometimes it just takes one conversation, a memory, or one person deciding that they're finally ready to speak. For Rhonda's family, that hope has never disappeared. As we've worked on this episode, one thing has become very clear. Rhonda Wilson was more than a missing person. She was a daughter, a sister, a mother, and someone whose family continues to live with unanswered questions for more than 2 decades after she disappeared. Although a murder charge was laid in this case, it was later withdrawn following changes in Canadian law surrounding Mr. Big confessions. Today, Rhonda's disappearance remains an active investigation, and her family is still waiting for answers. If you have information about the disappearance of Rhonda Joyce Louise Wilson, you can contact the Nova Scotia Major Unsolved Crimes Program at 1-888-710-9090. Information can also be provided to your local RCMP detachment or through Crime Stoppers. We'd also like to thank Rhonda's family for trusting us with her story and for speaking with us during our research. Sharing memories that are more than 20 years old is not easy, and we're grateful for the time they spent helping us better understand who Rhonda was beyond the headlines. If this episode resonated with you, consider following the podcast, leaving a review, or sharing the episode with someone else. Every share helps bring renewed attention to cases that are still waiting for answers. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, help is available. You don't have to wait for a crisis to reach out. Whether you're looking for information, safety planning, or someone to talk to, there are organizations that can help. If you're in immediate danger, call 911. If you're in Nova Scotia, you can contact the provincial 24-hour domestic violence crisis line at 1-855-225-0220. Trained counselors are available 24 hours a day to provide confidential support and connect you with local resources. No one deserves to experience abuse, and support is always available whenever you're ready to reach out. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Carrie.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.